Xavier Knight stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his corner office, overlooking the skyline of New York City. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across his sleek, modern desk, where files and contracts lay neatly organized. As the CEO of Knight Innovations, every day was a whirlwind of decisions, meetings, and high-stakes deals. Yet, at that moment, Xavier felt a hollowness in his chest, a familiar ache that no amount of success could fill. He rubbed at his sternum absent-mindedly, recalling that it had been almost 8 months since the divorce was finalized. 8 months since Aurora walked out of his life. A sharp trill from his cell phone on the desk snapped Xavier out of his thoughts. He turned and saw an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. At first he considered letting it go to voicemail. His personal line was closely guarded, and rarely did unknown callers reach it. But an inexplicable urge made him pick up. "Xavier Knight speaking," he answered crisply, expecting perhaps a business associate who'd obtained his number. What he heard on the other end was not a polished voice of a professional, but the panicked, breathless sob of a woman. "Xavier." The voice was weak and trembling, but he recognized it instantly. His heart plunged to his stomach. It was Aurora. "Aurora?" he exclaimed, striding away from the window as every nerve in his body went taut. He hadn't heard her voice in months. Now the single utterance of his name from her lips sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. Before he could gather his wits to ask what was wrong, a screech of tires and the deafening sound of metal crashing against metal exploded through the phone. Xavier's blood ran cold. "Aurora, what's happening?" he shouted, pressing the phone harder to his ear, as if that could bridge the distance between them. Through the tinny phone speaker, he heard Aurora scream, a sound that made his heart seize, and then the line went dreadfully silent, except for distant shouting. Xavier's hand shook as he paced rapidly to his desk, panic threatening to break through his controlled demeanor. "Aurora, Aurora, answer me," he barked into the phone. No response came, only muffled voices and a relentless thudding in his own ears. His mind raced. Something terrible had happened, an accident by the sound of it. She had called him out of the blue, and now he refused to think the worst. Gritting his teeth, Xavier forced himself to stay calm. He activated the speaker and, with a few taps, attempted to trace the call or at least keep the line open. Years of leading a company had trained him to function under pressure, but this was different. This was Aurora. "Hold on, Aurora," he whispered, voice tight. "I'm coming." He didn't know where she was yet, but he intended to find out. Suddenly, there was movement on the call again. A new voice crackled through, deep and urgent. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Relief and fear warred within Xavier. "Yes, this is Xavier Knight," he answered immediately. "The owner of this phone, Aurora, she called me. What happened? Is she okay?" He realized his voice was shaking. The man on the other end sounded like he was in motion. "Sir, my name is Derek Foley, paramedic with City EMS. There's been an accident on Highway 7 just outside Ridgemont. The car flipped. A pregnant woman." He started to explain. "Pregnant." Xavier echoed in shock, barely processing the word. Aurora was pregnant? He clutched the edge of his desk. Could it be true? His thoughts splintered. If Aurora was pregnant, had she moved on with someone else in the months apart? But he couldn't get distracted now. "Aurora? Is she hurt?" he interrupted, dread coiling in his stomach. "She's alive," the paramedic replied, and Xavier felt weak with relief, knees nearly buckling. "But she's in bad shape, sir. We need to get her to a hospital immediately. She was in and out of consciousness, and she asked me to call you." Xavier's breath caught. Even in agony, Aurora had thought to call him. Which hospital? Xavier snapped into action, already moving around his desk, grabbing his jacket. "County General is the closest, about 20 minutes away in Ridgemont," Derek replied. Xavier knew Ridgemont. It was a smaller city adjacent to the bustling metropolis he lived in, practically a small town in comparison. Why was Aurora there? A million questions swirled, but one thing mattered now. "I'm on my way. I'll meet you there," Xavier said firmly. "Please, take good care of her." and "Thank you." The paramedic responded in the affirmative, and the call disconnected, leaving Xavier in the sudden quiet of his office with his heart pounding. Without wasting another second, Xavier grabbed his car keys, but then immediately realized the evening traffic out of New York City could cost precious time. He pressed a number on speed dial. "Edgar, prep the helicopter." He barked into the phone as soon as his head of security answered. "We have an emergency. I need to get to County General Hospital near Ridgemont. ASAP, have the helipad cleared and ready in 5 minutes." Edgar needed no further explanation beyond the urgency in his boss's tone. As Xavier rushed out of his office, his mind was a storm of fear and confusion. Aurora was hurt, badly, and she was pregnant. He hadn't even known she was seeing anyone seriously, let alone. The thought of her carrying another man's child sent an unexpected pang through him. But he shoved that aside. Whoever the father was, it didn't matter right now. All that mattered was Aurora's life hanging in the balance, and the fact that she had called him in her moment of dire need. His Italian leather shoes echoed sharply on the marble floors of the executive corridor as he made his way to the elevator. Images flooded his mind. Aurora's laugh in the sunshine, the way her eyes lit up. When she talked about dreams of a family, the day she left with tears in her eyes. He had pushed those memories down for months, burying himself in work to escape the pain of losing her. Now those memories surged, fueled by the fear of losing her forever if he didn't reach her in time. The elevator doors opened to the rooftop helipad, where a sleek black helicopter idled, its blades already chopping at the air. Edgar, a stout man with a calm demeanor, held the door open as Xavier jogged toward it. No words were exchanged beyond a brief, understanding nod. In moments, the helicopter lifted off, the city falling away beneath them. Xavier gazed out at the blur of lights, fists clenched on his knees. As the helicopter veered toward Ridgemont, Xavier closed his eyes for a second and murmured a fervent prayer he didn't even realize he knew how to say. "Hold on, Aurora." "Just hold on," he whispered, voice lost in the roar of the rotors, determination stealing. His features as they raced against time to reach the woman he had never stopped loving. Before we dive deeper into tonight's tale, welcome to our storytelling family. If heartfelt drama, second chances, and love that fights back are your thing, you're in the right place. Please tap subscribe, turn on the bell, and like this video so more people can find stories like this. And tell me in the comments, should Xavier be the one she called first, or is there more to this than we know? Wind whipped around the helicopter, but inside the cabin, Xavier was lost in memories. Ridgemont. The paramedic had said that name, and it struck a chord deep within him. Ridgemont was not just some random town. It was part of their story. Aurora's hometown sat just beyond Ridgemont's city limits. A quaint little community named Willow Creek where everybody knew their neighbors. It was in that small town that their fates had first intertwined. Flashback. 10 years ago, Willow Creek. A younger Xavier stepped out of a dusty black sedan onto Main Street in Willow Creek. The summer evening air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle and barbecue from a nearby block party. He had traded the gleaming skyscrapers of New York for a weekend back home, reluctantly at first. Fresh out of business school, Xavier had been eager to conquer the world, but his old family friend, Mrs. Thompson, insisted he visit and see how the town had changed. Truth be told, he never expected anything remarkable to happen during that visit. He certainly didn't expect Aurora Evans to come crashing into his life like a ray of sun through storm clouds. Xavier remembered it vividly. The sound of laughter and country music spilled from the open door of Maggie's Diner, a beloved local spot that had been around since his childhood. Stepping inside to grab a bite, he spotted a young woman in a yellow sundress balancing 3 plates of pie and laughing as she distributed them to a table of eager kids. Her hair was a cascade of dark chestnut curls, and when she turned, the late-day sun caught her face. That was the first time Xavier saw Aurora as more than the shy girl next door he dimly recalled from his youth. She had grown into a beautiful woman with a smile that could light up the whole diner. Aurora nearly bumped into him as she backed away from the table, wiping her hands on her apron. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she started. Then recognition sparked in her eyes. Xavier? Xavier Knight? He had been taller than she remembered, with broad shoulders filling out his crisp shirt. And he remembered feeling momentarily breathless that she even knew his name. "Aurora Evans, is that you?" he replied with a grin, astonished at the transformation of the girl who used to read books under the oak tree on Maple Street. They ended up talking for hours that warm summer night. Aurora was working at Maggie's to save up for nursing school, and she bubbled with enthusiasm as she told him about it. Xavier found himself captivated by her genuine warmth and the way her green eyes sparkled when she talked about helping people. In turn, he told her about his plans to start a business in the city. She listened intently, head tilted with that earnest interest that made him feel truly seen. By the time midnight came around, the block party outside was winding down, but Xavier and Aurora were just getting started. They strolled down the quiet main road, under strings of fairy lights left over from a summer festival. With an ice cream cone in hand, courtesy of the diner's owner, who was thrilled to see young love brewing. As she winked, they wandered toward the old Willow Creek Bridge overlooking a gentle river. Crickets chirped in the bushes, and the reflection of the moon danced on the water below. Xavier remembered Aurora leaning on the wooden rail, her face turned up to the star-studded sky. "Sometimes I forget how beautiful it is here," he had mused quietly. Aurora looked at him, surprised. "I always thought you couldn't wait to leave for the big city," she replied softly. "I couldn't wait," Xavier admitted, stepping closer until their shoulders almost touched. "But now I see things differently." He realized that as he said it, he meant it. The ambitious fire inside him had dimmed slightly in the comfort of this small-town night, replaced by a warmth he hadn't felt in years. A warmth he knew was because of the woman beside him. Aurora smiled at his answer, and they fell into a comfortable silence. A gentle breeze toyed with a strand of her hair, and without thinking, Xavier reached out to tuck it behind her ear. His fingers brushed her cheek, and she drew in a breath. In that moment, under the blanket of night and the hush of Willow Creek, Xavier felt a tug on his heart as strong as any calling. Slowly, he leaned down, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Her eyes fluttered closed, and their lips met in a tender, hesitant kiss. What started as gentle quickly blossomed into something passionate. Aurora's hand found the lapel of his jacket, holding him as if afraid he might vanish. Xavier cupped her face in his hands, pouring unspoken longing and promise into that kiss. When they finally parted, both were a little breathless and stunned by the intensity of what they had discovered in each other. "I've imagined that for a long time," Aurora confessed in a whisper, her cheeks flushing with both boldness and embarrassment. Xavier was pleasantly surprised. "You have," he murmured, forehead resting against hers. "So have I." And he had, perhaps not consciously, but in dreams. Of returning home and finding meaning beyond boardrooms and bank accounts, he now knew his heart had been waiting for Aurora. That night marked the beginning of everything. In the span of a single evening, Xavier went from a visitor passing through town to a man in love. They were inseparable the rest of his visit. Summer nights with ice cream and fireflies turned into daily phone calls after he returned to New York. No matter how many miles separated them, the connection only grew stronger. A year later, Xavier convinced Aurora to transfer her nursing studies to a university in New York City so they could be together. He promised her a life of both excitement in the city and cherished weekends back in Willow Creek. And Aurora, hopeful and in love, took the leap of faith with him. The helicopter jolted slightly in turbulence, and Xavier's eyes snapped open, the vivid memories fading. His heart clenched as he thought of how pure and joyous their beginning had been. That was before life grew complicated, before he allowed the pressures of his empire to overshadow the love they shared. As the lights of Ridgemont appeared on the horizon through the cockpit window, Xavier silently begged fate for a chance to make things right, to preserve that beautiful spark they once had. If Aurora could only hold on, Maybe he could remind her of those small-town nights and the promises they made under the stars. The helicopter touched down with a jolt on the hospital's helipad, the blades still whirling, as Xavier leapt out before it fully landed. The sun had dipped below the horizon, giving way to a purple twilight over Ridgemont. Edgar tried to follow, but Xavier motioned for him to stay with the helicopter. "I'll call if I need you," he shouted over the noise, already sprinting toward the rooftop access doors. Within minutes, Xavier was rushing through the bright fluorescent corridors of County General Hospital. The smell of antiseptic and the sound of urgent voices filled the air. His chest tightened with every step. He had to find her. At the reception desk, an older nurse looked up in surprise at the tall, frantic man with wind-tousled hair. Aurora Knight, he nearly gasped, using the last name she had when married to him, not even certain if she still went by it. She was just brought in from an accident. "Please, where is she?" Recognition flickered in the nurse's eyes, perhaps at the mention of Aurora's name, or the urgency in Xavier's voice. "Are you family?" she asked, eyes narrowing slightly. I'm her husband, ex-husband," Xavier corrected himself, the word catching in his throat. "She has no one else here yet. Please, I need to see her. She called me." His voice cracked despite his efforts to stay composed. Something in his expression must have convinced the nurse, because she gave a quick nod and stood up. "Follow me, sir. She's in the ER, Bay 3. Xavier followed on her heels down a hallway until they pushed through double doors into a bustling emergency room. Doctors and nurses hurried between curtained bays. Machines beeped steadily. The nurse drew aside a curtain to one bay. "She's right here. The doctors are with her," she said softly. Xavier stepped forward and felt the world tilt. On the gurney lay Aurora, and for a heartbeat he didn't recognize her. So pale and fragile she looked. An oxygen mask covered part of her face. A bruise was forming on her forehead, and her right arm was in a temporary splint. Scratches marred the skin of her cheeks. But it was undeniably her, the woman he'd loved, the woman he thought he'd lost to time and his own mistakes. His eyes burned at the sight. A doctor was at Aurora's side, checking readings on monitors. Xavier's entrance caught his attention. "You must be Mr. Knight." The doctor guessed. Xavier nodded, his voice failing him for a moment. How is she?" he managed at last, forcing himself to look from Aurora's still form to the doctor's face. The doctor, a brisk middle-aged man with kind eyes, gave a slight smile of reassurance. "She's stable for now. A mild concussion, a few cracked ribs, and some internal bruising. But we've got those under control. We're monitoring for any signs of internal bleeding. The car's airbags and the seatbelt likely saved her life." Xavier exhaled a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "Thank God," he murmured. His gaze drifted to Aurora's midsection, where a blanket had been draped. Even through it, he could see the distinct swell of her pregnant belly. It made his heart constrict strangely. "And the baby? The pregnancy?" Xavier asked haltingly, not sure what words to use, especially as he had no right to this information. His mind flashed through possibilities. If the child wasn't his, did he have any business being here beyond honoring her request? But he shoved those thoughts aside. Aurora needed him, and that was enough. The doctor grew more serious. "She was asking for you when she came to. That's why the paramedics called you. It's good you're here." He flipped through a chart. "Your ex-wife is about 32 weeks along from our estimation and from her prenatal records. There are 2 fetal heartbeats. We have both babies on the monitor, and their heart rates look steady for now." Xavier's eyes widened. "Both babies," he repeated in astonishment. The words took a moment to sink in. Aurora was carrying twins. A swirling mix of emotions crashed over him. Shock, confusion, even a stab of hurt. That Aurora had never told him she was pregnant at all, let alone with twins. He steadied himself on the foot of the bed, feeling as though the ground had slipped from under his feet. The doctor continued gently, misreading Xavier's reaction as simple concern. "Twins, yes. She's been receiving prenatal care here in Ridgemont for the last several months. We're in contact with her OB/GYN now." Given the trauma, there's a risk she could go into preterm labor. We're taking precautions to prevent that, but we've prepared the neonatal ICU just in case. Xavier swallowed hard and nodded, trying to focus. Can I stay with her? He asked quietly, eyes never leaving Aurora's face. She looked so small amidst the tangle of tubes and medical equipment. He barely noticed the doctor's nod. Of course. Speak to her too. She might be able to hear you. With that, the doctor gave Xavier a brief pat on the shoulder and moved, off to speak with a nurse, leaving him alone at Aurora's bedside. For a long moment, Xavier simply stood there, his throat tight. Carefully, he reached out to take Aurora's hand. It felt cool and limp, but it was still the same delicate hand he used to hold during late-night walks and early morning cuddles. "Aurora," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "I'm here. You're going to be okay. Just hold on, please." His thumb gently stroked the back of her hand. He wanted to say so much. Apologies that were long overdue, assurances that he would fix everything if given. The chance, pleas for her to wake up and scold him for being late as she used to. But the words tangled in his throat. Instead, a single tear escaped down his cheek, and he quickly wiped it away with the back of his free hand. Looking at Aurora now, Xavier was struck by how wrong things had gone between them. Here she was, hurt and vulnerable, carrying life within her, two lives he knew nothing about until now. Guilt stabbed at him. How could they have become such strangers that she wouldn't tell him something so monumental? What had he done to make her feel she couldn't? As machines hummed softly, Xavier made a silent vow. If Aurora survived this, and she had to, he wouldn't consider any other outcome. He would do whatever it took to set things right. Even if those babies weren't his, he would make sure she was safe, that she had everything she needed. He would earn back her trust somehow. Standing vigil in the ER bay, Xavier realized just how empty his life had been without her, and how desperately he wanted a second chance. A faint rustle pulled him from his thoughts. Aurora's head turned slightly on the pillow, and a soft moan escaped her lips. "Aurora?" Xavier leaned in, hope and anxiety surging. Her eyelids fluttered, as if she was struggling to wake from a heavy sleep. "Aurora, I'm here," he said again gently. Her fingers twitched in his grasp, a slight pressure responding to his. Her eyes cracked open, unfocused and glassy with pain. She looked confused, disoriented by the bright lights and beeping machines. "Xavier." Aurora murmured weakly, her voice barely audible through the oxygen mask. But she knew him. She recognized him there. "Shh, I'm here," he soothed, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead carefully. "You're in the hospital. You had an accident, but you're safe now. I'm with you." Aurora's brows furrowed beneath the mask. She tried to speak again, her voice strained. "The babies," she whispered, tears gathering in the corners of her eyes. Even in a haze, her first thought was for them. "They're okay," Xavier rushed to reassure her, squeezing her hand. "The doctors are watching over them. You and the babies are going to be fine." Hearing himself speak those words, the babies felt surreal. He forced a smile he hoped would comfort her, though his own heart was pounding. Aurora blinked slowly, a tear slipping down her temple. She looked at Xavier with an emotion he couldn't quite read, relief, sorrow, and longing all at once. "You came," she breathed. "Of course I came," he replied, his voice gentle but firm. His free hand found her shoulder, holding her as if to anchor her to the world. "There's no way I'd let anything happen to you." The intensity in his tone made her eyes well up even more. Before either of them could say more, a spasm of pain crossed Aurora's face. She grimaced, a soft cry escaping. Immediately, alarms on the monitors started pinging rapidly. Xavier's heart leapt into his throat. "Doctor!" he called out, panic lacing his voice. Almost instantly, medical staff descended, gently urging Xavier back. "She's going into labor," one of the nurses said, checking the readouts and the tightening of Aurora's abdomen under the blanket. "Contractions are starting." The doctor from earlier was already by Aurora's other side, barking orders to prepare medication to delay the labor. Xavier felt himself tremble as he was pushed just out of the way. Aurora's face contorted in pain that she was too weak to fully voice. It tore at his soul to see her like this. One nurse began to administer a drug to slow the contractions, while another adjusted the oxygen mask and tried to soothe Aurora, who was now whimpering softly, eyes squeezed shut. "It's too early for them. Please, not yet." Aurora panted between shallow breaths, clearly terrified. Xavier couldn't bear it. He stepped forward again, despite the controlled chaos around the bed. He took Aurora's hand once more, and this time no one objected. "I'm here, Aurora," he said, bending close, his forehead almost touching hers as she writhed lightly. "Listen to me, love. Breathe. You taught me that, remember?" Deep breaths. He inhaled and exhaled slowly, guiding her. Somewhere in his mind, it registered that he had called her love, a term of endearment he hadn't used since before the divorce. But it felt natural, inevitable in that moment. A few tense minutes passed as the medical team worked. Aurora focused on Xavier's face and the sound of his voice, trying to steady her breathing to match his. Slowly, mercifully, the medication did its job. The contractions subsided, and Aurora sagged back, exhausted and trembling, but the immediate crisis had passed. The monitors returned to their steady rhythm, and the staff breathed a collective sigh of relief. "Good job, Aurora," the doctor said with a reassuring smile. "We've stopped the labor for now. You're safe." He nodded to Xavier as well, acknowledging his helpful presence. "We'll keep monitoring closely. With luck, we can keep those babies inside a while longer." Aurora nodded weakly, eyes heavy. Her grip on Xavier's hand loosened as the exhaustion overcame her. "Xavier," she whispered one last time before sleep claimed her again. He remained by her side, shaken but steadfast, as the doctors finished. Their checks and the flurry of activity dissipated once more. When finally they were alone again, Xavier sank into the chair beside her bed, still holding her hand, mind racing. The fear of nearly losing her and the babies had rattled him to his core. He brushed a gentle kiss across her knuckles and realized with absolute clarity he could not lose Aurora a second time. Now that the immediate danger had momentarily passed, questions flooded in. She was pregnant with twins. How on earth had it come to be that he was finding out like this? Had their time apart truly been so filled with hurt and pride that she felt she couldn't tell him? Xavier closed his eyes, anguish and regret seeping through him. It was time to confront the past he had run from, to understand how they ended up here. As he watched Aurora sleep, pale but alive, he silently vowed to piece together what went wrong, starting with facing memories of how their marriage had unraveled in the first place. Flashback, 3 years ago, New York City. Aurora stood in front of the dining room table in their Manhattan penthouse, her hands trembling slightly as she lit the last of the ivory candles. The table was set with their best china, and a bouquet of red roses stood proudly at its center. She smoothed the soft fabric of her blue cocktail dress and took a deep breath. Tonight was their 3rd wedding anniversary, and she had gone through great lengths to create a romantic dinner at home. The aroma of Xavier's favorite meal, coq au vin, slowly simmered to perfection, wafted from the kitchen. Everything was perfect. Except Xavier was late. She glanced at the clock on the wall. 9:45 p.m. He was nearly 2 hours overdue. The candles had long since melted down, wax pooling on the silver holders. The food sat lukewarm despite her attempts to keep it warm. Aurora's heart sank a little further with each tick of the clock. She had reminded him about tonight at least 3 times that week, and each time he had smiled and assured her he wouldn't miss it for the world. Yet the world of board meetings and investors seemed to always take precedence. At 10 p.m., the front door finally clicked open. Xavier rushed in, looking harried in his suit, tie loosened and hair slightly disheveled. "Aurora, I am so sorry," he began, dropping his briefcase by the entrance. The meeting ran over, and then there was an issue with the Tokyo clients. His apology froze on his lips as he took in the scene. The untouched dinner table, the cold meal, Aurora standing beside it with her arms crossed and eyes shiny with unshed tears. "You forgot," Aurora said quietly, hurt evident in her voice. It wasn't a question. Xavier opened his mouth, then closed it, guilt flashing across his face. I didn't forget. I swear. I just lost track of time," he tried to explain, stepping closer. The scent of wine and rosemary from the dish filled the space between them. "It was an emergency at work. I had no choice." Aurora swallowed, trying to keep her composure. "There's always an emergency at work, Xavier." Her voice trembled despite her efforts to steady it. "Every time there's something important at home. You have a meeting, or a call, or some crisis that apparently only you can solve." A tear escaped down her cheek, and she wiped it away quickly, unwilling to cry on this night. "Do you realize you missed not just our anniversary dinner, but also the appointment with the decorator for the nursery room today?" Xavier ran a hand through his hair, frustration mingling with remorse on his face. "Aurora, we've talked about this. I told you I'm not ready for kids yet. The nursery is just an office for now." He sighed, reaching out to touch her arm. She flinched away, and his hand dropped. "I thought we agreed to hold off a little longer, until things settle at the company." "Hold off?" Aurora repeated, disbelief choking her words. "Xavier, things never settle with your company. There's always a next project, a next crisis. We've been holding off on starting a family for over a year now. And you promised me you'd come meet the decorator today just to consider turning that spare room into a nursery in the future. It was important to me." Her voice cracked and more tears welled despite her resolve. Xavier exhaled slowly, the weight of the day and the argument pressing on him. "I know it was, and I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you, I promise. We can reschedule with the decorator or find an even better one. I'll do it myself if I have to." He tried to smile to lighten the mood, but it fell flat. Aurora's shoulders only sagged further. "It's not about the decorator, Xavier," she said softly, exhaustion seeping into her tone. "It's about us, about you not being here, ever. I eat dinner alone most nights. I go to bed alone, wake up alone, while my husband is married to his work." She gestured at the cold plates on the table. "This was supposed to be a celebration of us, a reminder of the love we promised each other. But I'm the only one standing here." Her words stung. Xavier felt defensive anger flare up to mask the guilt. "That's not fair. I am working hard for us, for our future. All of this," he gestured around at the luxurious apartment with its glittering view of the city lights, "it doesn't come for free. I don't want us to worry about money or security ever." "I thought you understood that." His voice hardened inadvertently, a sharp edge of pride cutting through. Aurora's eyes widened, a fresh tear sliding down her face. "I never cared about living in a penthouse or having millions in the bank. I married you for you, Xavier, the man who took me stargazing on a rickety bridge in Willow Creek, the one who used to bring me wildflowers and make me laugh when I had a bad day. I barely see that man anymore." Her voice dropped to a whisper at the end, and those words hung in the air like a painful truth. Xavier felt something in his chest crack at her confession. He stepped forward, reaching both hands out to take hers. This time, she let him, though her fingers were limp. "I'm still that man, Aurora," he pleaded softly. I know I've been distant, the pressure, it's more than I expected, but I'm doing it because I want to give you everything, give us everything. I thought that would make you happy." She looked up at him, eyes swimming with sorrow. "I never wanted everything. I just wanted you, your time, your attention, your heart, Xavier. If we don't have that, then all the money and success in the world mean nothing." Her lips trembled as she spoke each word carefully, as if laying her soul bare. "You have my heart," Xavier insisted, a note of desperation creeping into his voice. "You always have." He squeezed her hands, willing her to believe it. But even to his ears, it sounded like he was trying to convince himself as much as her. Aurora closed her eyes, tears falling freely now. "If that's true, Then why do I feel so alone? The simple question hit Xavier like a punch. He had no easy answer. Instead of replying, he pulled her into his arms. She resisted for a half-second before collapsing against his chest, quietly sobbing. Xavier stroked her hair, guilt swirling within him. He wanted to promise it would change, that he would be better, and he did whisper, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," over and over into her hair. That night, they never did eat the anniversary dinner. Aurora cried herself to sleep in his arms on the couch, and Xavier stayed awake, staring at the flickering candlelight shadows on the wall, wondering how things had gotten to this point. They made up the next day with gentle words, and Xavier sending a grand bouquet of roses to her work as an apology. But both of them knew this wound ran deeper than any flower or fancy dinner could heal. The cracks had been exposed, and unless something changed drastically, those cracks would only widen. As the flashback played out in Xavier's mind, he felt the old ache resurfacing. Back in the present, sitting beside Aurora's hospital bed, he gave her hand a tender squeeze even though she slept. "I should have been there, Aurora," he whispered, using the nickname he hadn't spoken in so long. The memory of her tears that night, and many nights after, weighed heavy on him. He realized that the greatest emergencies he should have attended to were the ones in his own home, in Aurora's breaking heart. He had been blind to it then, but he wouldn't be anymore. Swallowing hard, Xavier prepared himself to face the next set of memories, no matter how painful, because understanding the past was the only way to fight for their future. Xavier sat in the dimly lit hospital room, the rhythmic beeping of Aurora, his heart monitor a gentle reminder that she was still with him. Outside the window, the first light of dawn was just creeping in, painting the sky in tentative pink and orange hues. He hadn't slept at all. All night he remained by Aurora's side, stroking her hand or brushing a knuckle, along her cheek, as if the constant touch could tether her to life and health. His mind churned with reflections of their past and worries for their future. The soft click of the door opening made Xavier straighten in his chair. A woman stepped in, her expression taut with concern. She was around Aurora's age, with dark curly hair pulled into a loose bun and warm brown skin. In her arms, she carried a small duffel, and her eyes were red-rimmed as if she'd been crying or awake all night. The moment the woman saw Xavier, her steps faltered. It was clear she recognized him immediately, perhaps from photos or Aurora's descriptions. Her expression shifted from worry to guarded suspicion. "Xavier Knight," she said, not bothering to mask the coolness in her tone. Xavier rose, gently releasing Aurora's hand. "Yes, that's me," he replied quietly. He surmised this must be one of Aurora's close friends. "And you are?" "Imani," she answered shortly. "Imani Harris. I'm a friend of Aurora's from here in Ridgemont. We work together. Or did, until she took leave." Imani stepped closer to the bed, her eyes softening as she looked at Aurora's sleeping form. She placed the duffel bag on a chair and lightly touched Aurora's leg under the blanket, as if to silently offer comfort. Then, remembering Xavier's presence, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I heard about the accident and came as soon as I could. I didn't expect to find you here." The way she said "you" was edged with years of pent-up judgment. Xavier took in a slow breath. He could sense Imani's protective anger and hurt on Aurora's behalf. He couldn't blame her. She likely only knew one side of the story, and even that told of him hurting Aurora. "Aurora called me herself when the accident happened," he explained softly. "I got here as fast as I could. I'm not going anywhere until I know she and the babies are safe." Imani folded her arms. "I'm surprised she even had your number still. After everything." She shook her head, clearly biting back sharper words. Xavier felt a pang of shame. "I know I'm probably the last person you or she expected to see, but I promise you, I just want to help. I care about her." His voice was earnest, and in that moment, utterly sincere. Imani's eyes flashed. "Care about her?" she echoed, disbelief thick in her voice. Where was that care when she cried herself to sleep for months after moving back here? When she found out she was pregnant and was terrified and alone? Each question was a small blow, and Xavier absorbed them silently, guilt carving new wounds in his heart. He dropped his gaze. "I didn't know," he said, his voice rough. "I swear to you, I didn't know she was expecting." "Aurora? She never told me." Imani studied him for a moment, surprise flickering across her face. Clearly she had assumed otherwise. "No, she wouldn't have," she said after a pause, a sigh escaping her. She dragged a chair over to the other side of Aurora's bed and sat down. Her hostility softened a fraction now that she realized Xavier hadn't willfully abandoned a pregnant wife. Aurora was always too proud, or maybe too hurt. Imani gently adjusted the blanket over Aurora. "She didn't want to ask anything of you after the divorce. She said it was better if she did it on her own." Imani's voice quivered slightly. It was clear how much she cared for Aurora. Xavier ran a hand over his face, trying to process that. Aurora had been pregnant, alone, and he hadn't been there, because he hadn't been allowed to be there, because he had driven her to a place where she felt she couldn't even tell him. "I never stopped loving her, you know," he confessed in a low, strained voice, surprising himself that he said it out loud in front of a stranger. "Losing her was the biggest mistake of my life. If I'd known about the babies—" He trailed off, pain evident in his eyes as they returned to Aurora. "I would have been here sooner. I would have. Imani cut in, not unkindly but with clear skepticism. "Quit your big city job and run back to her." She raised an eyebrow. "Forgive me, Mr. Knight, but I have to be honest. I watched Aurora go through hell because of how things ended between you two. It's hard for me to believe words. I only trust actions." Xavier met her gaze steadily. "Then I will show her, through my actions. I know I have a lot to make up for. I plan to spend every day of my life proving how much she means to me, if she'll let me." There was quiet conviction in his tone that made Imani regard him thoughtfully. Silence fell between them, except for the monitors. Finally, Imani nodded, perhaps seeing the determination and love in Xavier's face. "All right. For now, Aurora needs us both, I think. So truce." She extended a hand across the bed, offering a tentative smile. "Let's take care of our girl." Xavier managed a small, appreciative smile as he reached out to shake Imani's hand gently. "Truce," he agreed. They both returned their attention to Aurora, unified in concern. After a moment, Imani reached into the duffel and pulled out some personal items: a hairbrush, a phone charger, comfortable slippers, and a small framed photo. She placed the photo on the bedside table. Xavier saw it was of him and Aurora from a few years ago, laughing and holding each other on a beach. He recognized it. It was from a weekend getaway to Cape Cod during happier times. His chest constricted at the realization that Aurora kept this picture by her side. "She never stopped loving you either," Imani said softly, noticing where his eyes landed, "no matter how much she tried to hide it. She talked about you often at first, then less so, but I could tell you were always in her heart, especially when she realized she was carrying." Imani stopped herself, unsure if it's her place to continue. "Carrying my children," Xavier finished for her, his voice almost a whisper. He needed to say it, to acknowledge it fully. "They are mine, aren't they?" He looked up at Imani with searching eyes, seeking confirmation of what he already suspected. His mind raced through the timeline: 8 months since the divorce, Aurora around 7 months pregnant. It added up with agonizing perfection. Imani nodded slowly. "Yes." She confided in me. "The twins are yours." Her words were gentle, yet they struck Xavier like a bell tolling. He closed his eyes, a shuddering breath leaving his lungs. A mix of profound joy and deep regret washed over him. Joy, because he was going to be a father, of 2 no less. Regret, because he had missed so much already, and because of the pain Aurora must have gone through alone. Xavier moved to the side of the bed and knelt down, bringing himself closer to Aurora's level. He carefully laid a hand on the blanket, covering her abdomen. He didn't press, just rested it there, awe on his face. Underneath his palm, he imagined the faintest of movements. Perhaps one of the babies stirring, or perhaps it was just his hopeful mind. "Hey there," he whispered quietly, unsure if he was addressing Aurora or the unborn twins. It's your dad." Saying it out loud made it real, and his voice hitched. "I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you or your mummy, I promise." Imani looked on, her eyes misty now, any remaining animosity completely melted away by the sight of Xavier's raw emotion. She cleared her throat softly and rifled again through the duffel. "There's something else," she said, pulling out a sealed envelope, slightly crumpled around the edges. Aurora's elegant handwriting adorned the front, spelling out Xavier's name. "She wrote this a couple weeks ago," Imani explained, holding it out to him. "She asked me to mail it, but she never gave the final okay to send it. I think she was still deciding. When I heard about the accident, I thought it might be important to bring it." Xavier accepted the envelope with unsteady fingers. His name on it blurred as tears pricked his eyes. He carefully opened the unsealed flap and unfolded the letter inside. Aurora's familiar script covered the page. "You don't have to read it now," Imani said gently, noticing his trembling hands. "It might be heavy." Xavier nodded, exhaling slowly. "Thank you, Imani." He slipped the letter back into the envelope for the moment, deciding to wait until he was alone to absorb her words. He placed it safely in the inner pocket of his suit jacket, close to his heart. Just then, Aurora stirred with a soft sigh, drawing both their attention. Her eyes fluttered open, more alert than the night before. "Imani," she croaked, noticing her friend first. Imani was instantly by her side, squeezing her shoulder lightly. "Hey you," Imani greeted softly, her face lighting up with relief. "You're safe. Gave us all a scare, but you're going to be all right." She gently adjusted Aurora's pillow as Aurora blinked, and then her gaze found Xavier, who had risen from his kneel but now hovered anxiously. Aurora's face registered surprise and confusion as memory seeped back. "Xavier, you're really here," she whispered. Her voice was weak, but the tone held wonderment, as if she half believed seeing him was just part of a dream. "I'm here," he assured her, stepping closer to her side, opposite Imani. "I'm not going anywhere." He took her hand again, and she squeezed back faintly. Aurora looked between her friend and her ex-husband, tears gathering in her eyes. "The babies," she started, "still safe inside, thanks to this guy," Imani chimed in gently, nodding toward Xavier. "And thanks to you being one tough mama." Aurora managed a tiny smile at that, though it quickly turned into a grimace of pain or emotion. Xavier felt her grip tighten slightly. "Aurora, you don't have to talk about anything right now," he said softly. "Just rest." "I'm so grateful you're okay." His eyes were glassy with moisture. He wanted to hug her, hold her, but wires and IVs and caution held him back. But Aurora shook her head lightly. "No, I need to say this." She took a trembling breath, wincing but determined. Her gaze latched onto Xavier's. "I was coming to see you, to tell you about them." Her free hand moved to her belly. "I was so afraid, but I couldn't keep it from you any longer. I was going to tell you everything and ask if you could ever forgive me." A tear rolled down her cheek. Xavier couldn't stop himself. He leaned in and brushed the tear away tenderly with his thumb. "Forgive you, Aurora, I'm the one," he began, voice cracking. Imani quietly stepped back. "I'll give you two some privacy," she murmured, squeezing Aurora's shoulder once more and shooting Xavier a look that said, "Be gentle." She slipped out of the room, closing the door behind her. As the door clicked shut, Aurora and Xavier were left in silence save for the monitors. Aurora looked small and fragile in the bed, but there was a steely resolve in her eyes. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she said softly. "After we ended things, I didn't want to trap you or make you feel obligated. You said you weren't ready for a family then, and I was so hurt. I thought maybe it was better if I just disappeared from your life so you could focus on what you wanted." She swallowed, voice thick. "But I see now how wrong I was. I should have told you from the start. I'm sorry, Xavier." Xavier gently lifted her hand to his lips, and pressed a kiss to it, tears slipping free from his eyes. "Aurora, you have nothing to apologize for," he murmured. "I'm the one who made you feel like you couldn't come to me. I failed you, again and again. I'm so sorry for every night I left you lonely, for pushing you away when all you wanted was my love." Aurora shook her head, fresh tears spilling. "We both made mistakes. I should have fought harder for us instead of running away. I didn't know what else to do. The night I left, it was because I couldn't stand the pain of being in the same home but feeling a world apart from you." Xavier's heart twisted. The flashback of their final fight loomed on his conscience, but he forced himself to focus on the present. "I don't blame you for leaving," he said softly. "I gave you every reason to, but I want you to know I never signed those divorce papers easily. Every day since, I've regretted letting you walk out that door and finding out that you were carrying our children." His voice broke. "I can't imagine how alone you must have felt." Aurora closed her eyes, tears streaming now. "I was terrified," she admitted, "but I had to be strong, for them, and part of me hoped that maybe one day I'd be brave enough to tell you, that maybe you'd still care." She opened her eyes again, searching his face. "Do you?" It was a fragile question, tinged with fear of rejection. In answer, Xavier gently cupped her face, mindful of a small bandage on her temple. He leaned down and pressed a tender kiss to her forehead. "Aurora, I never stopped caring. I never stopped loving you," he whispered against her skin. "I've been a fool, blinded by all the wrong things. But losing you showed me what truly matters. You matter. Our family matters. Nothing else." Aurora let out a soft sob, relief and love shining in her eyes. I love you too, Xavier," she whispered. "I tried not to, tried to hate you maybe, but my heart wouldn't let go." Xavier rested his forehead against hers, careful of the oxygen tube near her nose. "I don't deserve it, but I'll spend the rest of my life earning your love back." He inhaled shakily. "These past hours, almost seeing you slip away, it terrified me. I can't lose you again, Aurora. I can't." Aurora weakly raised a hand to touch his cheek, her fingers brushing the stubble there. "You won't," she promised softly. "I'm right here. And now you know about our babies. You're stuck with us." She attempted a watery smile. A laugh mixed with a sob escaped Xavier, and he turned his head to press a kiss into her palm. "Stuck with you is all I ever truly wanted," he said, voice full of affection, and a hint of the playful charm that used to make her heart flutter. "And if you'll let me, I intend to be the best husband and father I can be. I know I have a lot to learn, but I want to learn it with you." Aurora's eyes lit with a gentle joy, the shadows of fear and uncertainty slowly ebbing. "I'd like that," she replied, her voice faint but sincere. They stayed like that for a while, foreheads touching, hands entwined, finding solace in each other's presence. Though there would be much to discuss and many challenges ahead, in that quiet dawn light they had found their way back to each other. Their hearts, though scarred by the past, beat with hope for the future that now seemed within reach. "Friends, now that we know the truth, what should Xavier do next? Should he give Aurora time to heal, or fight now to win back his family? Drop your thoughts below. Don't forget to like this video if you're invested in their reunion, and subscribe so you'll be here when the next twist arrives. 2 weeks later, the days that followed the accident were a blur of vigilance, hope, and healing. True to his word, Xavier never left Aurora's side. With rest and careful monitoring, Aurora's condition improved steadily. The doctors managed to keep the premature labor at bay for 2 weeks, a crucial stretch of time to help the twins grow stronger. Now, at 34 weeks pregnant, Aurora sat propped up in her hospital bed, one hand protectively on her belly, the other entwined with Xavier's. Dawn light filtered through the curtains. They had weathered the storm of the accident and emerged closer than ever. In the quiet moments, they often found themselves dreaming aloud about the future, about names for the babies, how they might decorate a nursery, and even tentative plans to move out of the bustling city to somewhere more peaceful for the children. Each conversation filled with equal measures of excitement and nervousness. That morning, Aurora had been unusually uncomfortable. She had winced through a few cramps, but insisted it was just normal soreness. Xavier wasn't convinced. He watched her, anxiously, as another grimace crossed her face. "That's it," he said softly but firmly, pressing the call button for the nurse. "We're getting the doctor." Aurora exhaled shakily. "It might be time," she admitted, her voice laced with both fear and anticipation. Almost on cue, a warm gush soaked the sheets. Aurora's eyes widened. "Xavier, my water just broke." A mix of adrenaline and exhilaration shot through Xavier. He stood and leaned out the door, immediately flagging down the nurse approaching. "I think her water broke," he said, trying to keep calm. The nurse sprang into action, and within minutes the room was a hive of controlled activity. The doctor confirmed what they already knew. The twins were on their way. Due to their premature status and the prior trauma, a C-section was recommended to ensure a safe delivery. Aurora was frightened. Her hand trembled in Xavier's grasp as they prepped her for surgery, but she nodded in consent. "I'm right here, love," Xavier whispered, donning surgical scrubs to accompany her into the operating room. "I won't leave you." In the bright operating theater, Xavier stayed at Aurora's head, stroking her hair gently as a curtain draped her lower body. The anesthesiologist worked quickly, and soon the procedure began. Time seemed to warp for Xavier. He found himself holding his breath, listening intently to every word the doctors uttered beyond the curtain. Aurora squeezed his hand. Her eyes locked on his, seeking reassurance he gave readily. "You're doing great," he murmured, though in truth, all she had to do was lie there. He marveled at her courage nonetheless. "Just a little longer, and we'll meet our babies." The word "our" made Aurora's lips curve in a brave smile. Moments later, a thin, wavering cry filled the room. "Baby girl is out," announced the obstetrician over the curtain. A nurse swiftly carried a tiny, wriggling infant to a warmer. Aurora let out a sob of relief and joy. Xavier felt his heart swell to bursting. He craned his neck to catch a glimpse. All he saw was a flash of little arms and legs, and the impression of the smallest human he'd ever seen. Before he could even form a thought, a second, slightly stronger cry rang out. "And here's baby boy," the doctor said. Twin cries now mingled in the air, a beautiful, chaotic chorus that brought tears streaming down both Aurora's and Xavier's faces. "They're okay," Aurora gasped out, eyes searching Xavier's face for confirmation. Xavier laughed through his tears, nodding. "They're perfect," he managed. A nurse soon brought the swaddled boy around for a quick look, even as the team worked on the girl a moment longer. Xavier saw a tiny pink face, eyes scrunched shut, a wisp of dark hair. When the nurse gently placed the baby boy against Aurora's cheek, Aurora let out a soft cry of joy. She kissed her son's forehead lightly. A minute later, the baby girl, smaller but feisty, judging by her cries, was brought over as well. Xavier could hardly see through his tears as he beheld the two tiny miracles cradled briefly in Aurora's arms. "Hello, my angels," Aurora whispered, voice trembling with love. Xavier brushed a kiss on Aurora's temple, overwhelmed with gratitude. "They're going to take them to the NICU now, just to be safe," a pediatric doctor explained gently. "But they're breathing on their own, which is a great sign for 34-week twins. You can see them again very soon." Aurora nodded, reluctantly letting the nurses carry the babies to the neonatal intensive care unit for monitoring. The moment they were gone, Xavier pressed his forehead to Aurora's and let out a breath he felt he'd been holding for 2 weeks. "You did it," he whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Tears of happiness glistened in Aurora's eyes. "We did it." She was exhausted, but the radiant smile on her face was the most beautiful thing Xavier had ever seen. In that instant, with the echoes of their newborn's cries still lingering in the air, Xavier felt time stop. He had thought sealing a billion-dollar deal was the pinnacle of his life's achievements. How wrong he had been. This moment eclipsed it 1,000 times over. Later that day, once Aurora had been stitched up and moved to recovery, and the twins were confirmed to be stable and healthy in the NICU, Xavier and Aurora got to properly meet their children. They stood side by side, peering down into 2 incubators, where a tiny girl and boy lay swaddled and sleeping. Aurora gently slipped her hand through the porthole of the baby girl's incubator, lightly touching her daughter's small fingers. The baby responded by curling her hand around the tip of Aurora's finger. "She has your hair," Aurora murmured with a soft laugh, noting the dark fuzz that matched Xavier's. Xavier placed his hand into the incubator for the baby boy, who was slightly larger, a tiny IV in his hand but otherwise perfect. The boy's little fingers wrapped around Xavier's pinky with surprising strength. Xavier felt a tear roll down his cheek at the touch. "And he has your nose, I think," he responded tenderly. They had already quietly discussed names during the past weeks, and now, seeing their faces, the choices felt right. "Welcome to the world, Lily," Aurora whispered to their daughter, a name they'd chosen to symbolize rebirth and hope. "And welcome, Lucas," Xavier added softly to their son, a name meaning light. Xavier slipped an arm around Aurora's shoulders as they watched the twins sleep. She leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. Despite the beeping machines and sterile hospital environment, they felt an overwhelming sense of peace and fulfillment. "Thank you, Aurora," Xavier said after a long silence, his voice raw with emotion. She looked up at him, eyebrows arching in gentle question. "For what?" "For giving me a family, for giving me a second chance." His eyes remained on the tiny faces of his children. "I promise I will never waste it. I will protect you all and love you with everything I have." Aurora reached up and pulled Xavier down for a soft, lingering kiss. It was their first true kiss since reconciliation, a seal on the promises made and kept. "I know you will," she whispered against his lips. "And I promise the same." In that gentle vow exchanged over their newborns, the wounds of the past were finally and fully healed. They had walked through fire and come out the other side as a family, stronger, wiser, and bound by a love that had proven it could overcome any trial. 6 months later, a warm summer sunset bathed Willow Creek in gold as the small town bustled with its annual fair. The distant sound of children's laughter and carnival games drifted through the air. On the old wooden bridge over the gentle river, Xavier and Aurora stood side by side, much as they had a decade ago on the night that sparked their love. But now, so much had changed. This time, they had their family with them. Aurora cradled little Lily against her chest in a baby sling, while Xavier held Lucas, who was babbling happily and reaching chubby hands towards the orange-pink sky. The twins, now healthy 6-month-olds, gazed in wonder at the world around them. Aurora and Xavier often joked that Lily had her father's thoughtful eyes, while Lucas had inherited his mother's bright smile. "I think they like it here," Aurora said softly, watching Lily coo as a gentle breeze rustled the nearby willow trees. "How could they not?" Xavier replied, rocking Lucas gently. "This place is magic. It brought their mom and dad together." He leaned over and kissed Aurora's cheek, earning a delighted squeal from Lily, who could sense her parents' joy. In the months since the twins' birth, life had taken on a new rhythm. True to his promise, Xavier reorganized his priorities completely. He hired additional executives at Night Innovations and even opened a satellite office closer to Willow Creek, so he and Aurora could split time between the city and her hometown. More often than not, they opted for the peace of the small town, surrounded by the supportive community that embraced them wholeheartedly. Aurora, too, found fulfillment in ways she never imagined. With Xavier's encouragement, she returned to nursing part-time at a local clinic in Ridgemont, her passion for helping others undimmed. But she made sure to balance it with time spent watching her babies grow and sharing quiet, precious moments as a family. Behind them, the sounds of the fair continued. It was the very same fair where years ago they had walked under twinkling lights and shared ice cream on this bridge. Xavier smiled at the memory and at the symmetry of fate. "Do you remember that night we sat right here, making wishes on stars?" he murmured. Aurora nodded, her eyes shining as she did remember. "I wished for a love that would last a lifetime," she admitted, a bit bashfully. Xavier's lips curved into a soft grin. "Funny, I wished I'd never have to let you go." He chuckled. "Took me a while, and a few mistakes, to really hold on to that wish properly. But I got there in the end. Aurora rested her head on his shoulder. We both did. She glanced down at the letter clasped in her hand, the very letter she had written to him during her pregnancy, which he had kept and only recently given back to her. In it she had poured out her regrets, her lingering love, and her hopes that he would one day meet his children. Now, none of it needed to be unsaid or unheard. They had shared every feeling face to face. Aurora smiled and tucked the letter safely into the pocket of the baby bag, a keepsake of a chapter they had closed together. Just then, footsteps clattered on the bridge and Imani appeared, carrying 2 cones of cotton candy. Thought the new parents could use a treat, she chimed, handing one to Aurora and playfully wagging the other in front of Xavier. Sugar to keep you going for the twins' first fare. They laughed, and Xavier accepted the cotton candy, freeing one hand by shifting Lucas into a one-arm hold with practiced ease. "You're going to spoil us, Imani," he said warmly. Imani, now proudly dubbed Auntie Imani by the couple, shrugged with a grin. "That's the plan." She reached out to tickle Lily's little chin. "And how are my favorite littles? Enjoying the fare?" Lily giggled at the attention, and Lucas waved a sticky fist, having stolen a pinch of cotton candy from Xavier's hand. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with hues of violet and red, the group fell into easy, contented silence. Imani snapped a quick photo on her phone, Aurora and Xavier standing close, each holding a twin, smiles on their faces, and a picturesque country sunset behind them. It was a photo of a family built on second chances and hard-won happiness. "Perfect," Imani declared, showing them the picture. In it, the love and peace emanating from Xavier and Aurora was palpable. They exchanged a glance after seeing it, and without a word, Xavier handed Lucas to Imani for a moment. He then turned to Aurora, gently taking her free hand. "What are you up to?" Aurora asked with a laugh as Xavier dropped to one knee. His eyes sparkled with the same adoration as on the day he first proposed years ago. From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. "Aurora," he began softly, his voice steady but brimming with emotion, "life gave me the privilege of loving you once, and by some miracle, I was given a second chance. Marrying you was the best decision I ever made, and losing you was my greatest regret. Will you marry me again? Will you continue to be my partner, my love, and the heart of my life for every day that I am given?" Tears welled in Aurora's eyes, and she nodded before she could even find words. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, of course I will." Imani cheered, bouncing a twin in each arm, as Xavier stood and slipped a simple yet elegant ring onto Aurora's finger, a ring that symbolized renewal and an unbreakable bond. Aurora threw her arms around Xavier, careful of the babies, and they kissed too, the sound of applause from a few fair-goers who'd noticed the romantic scene. When they parted, both were laughing and a little teary-eyed. Lucas and Lily gurgled as if in approval from Imani's arms. Aurora looked around at the hometown scenery, the bridge, the fair, and then at Xavier, the boy who became her husband, lost and now found again. "Looks like we got our wishes after all," she said softly. "Better than any wish," Xavier agreed, kissing her forehead and then each of his children on their heads. "We got a life lesson too, that love, when true, can find its way back, and that nothing is more important than the people we love." Aurora leaned into him, feeling the truth of those words as their twins were transferred back into their awaiting embrace. With their family complete and their hearts fuller than ever, they watched the first stars of evening appear. Under that gentle starlight in their small-town haven, Xavier and Aurora moved forward into a future lit by hope, gratitude, and the enduring power of love. And so, dear friends, Xavier and Aurora's journey reminds us of something timeless, that no amount of wealth can replace love, that second chances are worth fighting for, and that family is life's greatest treasure. If this story touched your heart, leave a heart in the comments and share the lesson you'll carry with you. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another tale that uplifts, inspires, and reminds us what truly matters. And if you're ready for more unforgettable stories of love and redemption, Click the next video in our playlist. Your heart will thank you.